We are very happy to note that Punjab has been chosen as a state at, to discuss at this forum. It's very important to us also and for others also to realize why it is important. The impressive past performance of the state, the dynamic and emotional nature of the society, the inimical neighbor sitting close, leaving no opportunity for us to hit us. And some economic stagnation of the recent times, it makes it a fit topic to discuss. Punjab's contribution in providing food security to the nation is very, very well known, but still people sometimes forget that after 1943 Bengal famine, how we have been able to manage all our scarcity situation. And the contribution of Punjab is very, very remarkable, we must understand. This food production system, which was established in late 60s, took roots, and first time its impact was seen was in 1987 drought. There was no problem. Otherwise, in 1973, 4 disturbance which led to the emergency, the food scarcity was definitely a factor. So we should not forget that even in the recent times, the COVID period has been managed very well, and the Garib Kalyan Yojana, which Government of India implemented, was contributed heavily from the food grain produced by the Punjab. So it's very important to keep that thing in mind. The food security has provided political stability to the country, and which has helped the state to progress. But Punjab has some other context also. The lost decade of 80s due to militancy, the border issues, the remnant of partition, those things coming like the inimical neighbor creating problem, still haunts at us. Because we could handle that problem, but definitely at the cost of something. At the cost of maintenance of the aggregate fiscal discipline and even the operational efficiency of the governments. So everything happens in a context. Now, at times, when everything is going well in the country, people think that there is no need of that food grain and Punjab should diversify. Definitely Punjab should diversify because Punjab has more problem due to that system. Because this narrow agricultural base of wheat and paddy tight cycle is creating huge problem. Today, if you take a helicopter ride from here to Amritsar, you will find a lake of 3 million hectare. And most of the water, the lake is 1.5 feet deep only because this is the water used for puddle of paddy. Paddy has been transplanted or it's almost in the last phase of transplantation. And this, most of the water, almost 80%, has come from groundwater. And this excessive groundwater use is creating other problem. This is creating health problem. This is creating, even somebody was telling me yesterday that even the satellites going, when they come over the Punjab, they feel the lack of gravitational pull because we pull out so much water from ground. Yes, there are 1.5 million tube wells in 3 million hectare. So every almost 7 acre land has one tube well. So it's a huge problem. And the varying water level is creating health hazard also. So that's why the government has made effort to provide surface water, canal water for the drinking purposes because the groundwater is creating a lot of health issues. So basic problem is this excessive dependence on the one production system. Industrially, MSME used to do very well earlier, but after liberalization and the free trade agreements which we did, India did it with ASEAN, SAARC countries. So a lot of Chinese stuff is coming through all those countries and our MSME got hit very badly. So the textile cluster of Ludhiana, hand tool, machine tool cluster of Phagwara and Batala, they all have been hit quite badly. That's why the MSME, we have not been able to do so much. There is a scope because still our hand tool is quite attractive for the buyers world over. So we can do a lot on that. Government understands its responsibility and they have taken certain measure because generally it has been felt that Punjab has been little profligate in its spending and all. So the one thing which government did, that we have, government of Punjab has adopted the wage level for the government employees, the national wage level, which was slightly lower, 10 to 20% lower than the previous Punjab scale. So since 2019-20, all the new recruitment is happening at that thing. So now we are paying them lower wages than what we used to pay. Even Punjab has been focusing on education and health very well. So the learning outcome in all those national survey, the Punjab is doing almost on the top level. So schools, now the new government has started a chain of school of eminence. So education sector is started doing well. In health, the local Mohalla clinic, the medical colleges, free medicines. Now in Punjab government hospitals, all medicines, all tests are being provided by the government, and there's a lot of utilization of these services. There's a lot of footfall, people are coming, taking treatment and getting so those things are happening. But still, we have huge challenge at the fiscal front, huge challenge on the diversification of agricultural system, because without adequate consultation, there was an attempt to transform the system. The system will take some time, and good amount of consultation is required. So I think this is, in this situation, the paper, I also had an occasion to look at that. It's a very, very convincing. I liked the presentation. Is mostly a couple of item I could not understand, that how could they gauge the obesity level among the women. From where did they get this data? And that is very, very high numbers. So we will discuss with them. So before I proceed further, I thank all the panelists, and I request Professor Nirvikar Singh to make his presentation first. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Mr. V.K. Singh, for that very nice introduction. I think you saved me 5 minutes. And thank you, Poonam, for such a wonderful IPF. I know the grand finale is still coming, but I just want to express my appreciation for just an absolutely fantastic 2 days. And Karthik, thanks for giving us the opportunity to talk about Punjab. So, Lakhwinder and Prakarsh and I have all been working on Punjab in our own from our own different perspectives for a long time. And it's really was a nice opportunity for us to get together. I think we didn't realize how difficult a task it would be, and I feel like we've often just scratched the surface. So, but hopefully we'll open up questions for future research. And we're equal co-authors, but just in the interest of time, I'm going to present, and then Lakhwinder and Prakarsh will answer all the hard questions as to obesity, measurement of obesity, and so on. And I just do want to acknowledge Montek Singh Ahluwalia, because he's really an inspiration, and I think he's the first person who told me that I should work on Punjab long ago, and I took him seriously. And I've watched him, contribute, with the expert group and so on. And I was very, very grateful for that opportunity as well. So I feel very fortunate that you're here, and the discussants actually just a really special set of discussants. So, okay, so I figured it was worth using up 2 minutes because I wanted to really say those important things. So I'll give a brief introduction. So I'm just following the paper, just picking out a few nuggets, hopefully. I'll talk a little bit about the economic structure, very conventionally, agriculture, industry, services. And then we'll go through labor and employment, education and health, public finances and governance, a little bit of policy discussion. If you've looked at the paper, you'll see that the policy discussion is actually interspersed throughout the paper. We kind of couldn't avoid that. And then I'll give a brief conclusion. And even though we're giving a kind of a complicated narrative, hopefully we'll give a few takeaways. And actually I'll start with some of those takeaways in a sense. So Punjab is really, in some senses, obviously I'm a Punjabi, so I think it's unique, but it is unique in certain ways. And some of it has to do with its history and geography. 1947 was the partition. I'll say some things for non-Indians, even though they'll be known to Indians. So 1947, the partition. 1966, when Punjab was reorganized into Punjab, Haryana, and the new Himachal Pradesh. And then really the elephant in the room for Punjab has been the issue of national food security and the Green Revolution. And from, I think from our perspective, that has really dominated everything that has happened in Punjab since then, in some ways much more significantly than the conflict of the 80s, though I don't want to minimize the impacts of that. So, agriculture, we think of Punjab as an agricultural state, but it has had, as Mr. V.K. Singh pointed out, it was quite successful in industry. It has a pretty vibrant service sector, just like many other Indian states. And I'll touch on those different aspects of the economy briefly. What I want to start with then is that the way we look at this, the issue of Punjab is that there are 4 constraints. So this is one of the takeaways right up front. It has a narrow and locked-in agricultural sector. The state of public finances is extremely poor, and that's really one of maybe the major constraint at this stage. There are disadvantages related to economic liberalization. The structure of the Punjab economy in 1991 wasn't conducive to adapting to the new liberalized regime. And I think policies both at the center and in other states and in Punjab itself have further exacerbated those disadvantages. And finally, and this is a little less apparent, but I think very important for Punjab, is that what we'd like to argue is that there's actually a relative decline of high-skilled human capital, which we can measure somewhat. And then also what we're calling organizational and social capital. We might split it out, but in some sense, these are all aspects of embodied knowledge. And we might call, we might speak of institutions and culture, but I like the term organizational and social capital. So we see these as the 4 major constraints. So again, a lot of this will be familiar to those of you who have some knowledge of India and Punjab. Punjab has a relatively high share, compared to other Indian states, it has a relatively high share of gross state value added, but you can clearly see diminishing returns in terms of the rate of increase of value added and of yields and so on has fallen dramatically. And it's exactly what you'd expect with agriculture. I mean, that's the classic example of diminishing returns. So Punjab agriculture is also relatively mechanized, so it has a relatively low share of employment. In other sessions, we talked about agriculture as being a sink for labor, but that's not the case in Punjab. It's dominated by wheat and rice, and there's a very tight wheat-rice cycle, and it's completely driven by the national food procurement policy, where farmers are able to sell pretty much all their crop at the minimum support price. There are enormous subsidies for water and electricity with large fiscal impacts. So I'll bring these out shortly. And a failure to achieve significant crop diversification. I think the first major attempt was in 1985. 40 years later, almost nothing has happened. There has been some progress in animal husbandry, so it's not a completely monoculture in that sense. But there also has been a failure to significantly increase value added for agricultural crops through processing or upgrading. I realize I'm just going through things very quickly. There's a little more detail in the paper. And then there are actually some very nice Punjab government documents which trace all this in detail. Something that I'm not sure everybody is completely aware of but there's very broad-based environmental degradation in terms of the decline of the groundwater table, pollution, waterlogging in some areas. It's a complete mess. And then, at the heart of this is the national food procurement policy. The Green Revolution, as you know, was driven by that desire for food security, and it's well past its sell-by date. So industry, the structure of industry in Punjab is less well known. Some of the industrial development of Punjab was actually triggered by the Green Revolution. So some industries arose as kind of ancillary industries for the new agricultural system. There's also more traditional industries like garments and textiles and so on. Like much of the rest of India, or all of India, industrial structure is dominated by small, less productive enterprises. It's probably worse it's more prominent in Punjab than elsewhere. It actually has more small enterprise, I think, and relatively few large units compared to other better off states. Okay, I mean, it might look good compared to Bihar or UP, but that's a different story. So it's not immediately clear what the sources of productivity differences are beyond scale effects. I think one thing on our agenda following this will be to do some micro-analysis. There's a lot of case study evidence, maybe I shouldn't have said anecdotal, actually we looked at a bunch of case studies, which suggest a decline of formerly successful industrial clusters, and clear evidence, again, qualitative evidence of underinvestment and lack of technology upgrading. The problems of market access. It seems that the ease of doing business measures don't really capture the difficulties of small businesses, and in that sense they're not that impactful. And not to be too harsh on the government, but the vision document for the Punjab government seems to have a disconnect in terms of where they want to be in 25 years and what the current situation is. The path isn't clear. I'll skip the tables. You can look at the tables and see, for example, you can compare share of value added with share of investment, and you can look at per factory profits. So you can tease out a little bit even from the aggregate data in terms of industrial structure. But I'll just keep going because I'm already behind where I thought I'd be. The service sector in Punjab is actually quite interesting. So it's actually relatively more employment intensive than the rest of India. So in India, agriculture is kind of the residual. In Punjab, it's services. And it is very heterogeneous, but a lot of the value added and employment is actually in trade and repair. And again, some of that is connected to the agricultural economy, trading food and food products and repairing machinery and so on. But it's actually quite low productivity services. And health and education are not part of these statistics. I'll come to them separately. It's not clear what the linkages are, and actually Lakhwinder had done some earlier work showing that backward and forward linkages in Punjab were relatively weak. So again, that's something we hope to update that work. What is interesting, and this actually comes from some of the things that the expert group, Punjab expert group did, and this is an extrapolation from that. If you think about what are the barriers to industrial development, they really boil down to land, access to finance, and then access to communications. And so if you think of these as the key services sectors for creating an industrial base, I think they could be a real policy focus there. So you can't have industrial clusters without land, without financial services, and without communications. Again, I'll skip the table. It was mentioned earlier that the PLFS is a periodic labor force surveys are very good sources of data, and we've used some of that. And here I'll just mention that we're seeing some kind of puzzles and paradoxes. And again, this is something that we have to tease out. One of the things we've done in the paper is do just some Punjab-Haryana comparisons, because again, it used to be that Punjab and Haryana were twins, and now they've completely diverged over the last couple of decades. And some of it is, of course, because of Haryana's position next to the National Capital Territory and Gurugram and so on. But there are other things which I think we don't quite understand. And so I think this comparison could be very useful in terms of thinking about regional development and how development diffuses geographically, for example. So we're seeing different patterns of labor force recovery in Punjab versus Haryana, and in particular, rural female youth unemployment in Punjab has skyrocketed, and we're not sure why. So these are I think, again, going back to some of the things we talked about this morning, I think that one can really try to break things down, not look at it just at the all India level, but look at it kind of state by state, and there are differences, and try to understand each state. And turning to education, actually the statistics look pretty good for primary education in Punjab, but then it seems to fall off actually already in secondary school, and and this is actually in terms of learning outcomes. So it may not be perfect, but it's not years of schooling. So we are getting some measures here of quality of education. But students do drop out quite surprisingly in secondary school in Punjab, and learning outcomes don't stay as strong. And the decline seems to be particularly apparent in higher education once you get to college and university. At the school level, I think this was for you, Karthik, that we can do some RCTs here with the school management system. So that was Prakarsh's suggestion. But yeah, I think there are puzzles here, and trying to understand what is happening in the state. So again, Punjab is a tiny state by Indian standards. So I always tell people outside India that, well, Punjab's population is equal to that of Australia. So just to kind of give it some weight in the imagination. So here's a striking statistic. The number of PhDs in Punjab has actually been falling, and the enrollment in higher education has been declining. And some of that is actually especially apparent for female students, and I think this is this is a phenomenon that is connected to the lack of jobs. And so despite what was said in the morning, students do stop going to university when they realize that it's useless. And so this is a disequilibrium situation as far as I can tell. There's a large supply of higher education institutions, but obviously they're not doing the job. And this returns to one of the themes from the morning. And there's definitely some evidence of decline of quality, maybe. And this is the obesity results, and they're from the National Family Health Survey. So I guess they actually weigh people. I don't know what. I mean, it can be done. Okay, so now I'll turn to public finances and governance. I think sorry, I went a little fast, but I think I'm on schedule now. Okay, so as we know from an earlier session, all the states in India are fiscally constrained, and we already know that Punjab is one of the worst. And again, I was surprised that Himachal has managed to achieve the same depths as Punjab, and I'm not sure how they managed to do it. But Punjab, I understand what's been going on, because this is actually one area where I think the legacy of conflict and the political economy of Punjab have really had a major impact. It has a very high debt to GSDP ratio, very low investment spending, and we actually have a picture of that in a more general context. I'll show you that towards the end. There are problems with tax capacity, but also tax effort, and luckily, Govind Rao is not here, so I can say without a fiscal bargain with the center, Punjab may not be able to escape its debt trap. It's going to need a bailout in some sense. That's what we argue. The Punjabi diaspora may be a source of temporary relief. So we said that in our paper, and then I went back and was looking at my notes from the expert group days, and I saw that there was some, I think Pramod Bhasin had an idea for NRI bonds, which we had a discussion about what they should be called, masala tikka bonds or something like that. So I don't know if anything came of that, but we're not the originators of that idea. So again, again, this has been discussed already. So a lot of expenditure is already committed. I think if you look at these numbers, what really stands out is actually the increasing increasing share of the power subsidy. I mean, this is just complete disaster. And again, it's politically unsolvable with the current system of, so basically, the environment of Punjab is being destroyed to grow wheat and rice, which sometimes rots in. So it's a completely inefficient situation. So tax receipts, they're actually pretty okay. I mean, it's hard to see the counterfactual. I think one of the problems is just tax effort, but also the structure of Punjab. If you have tiny enterprises and it's a lot of agriculture, then your tax base is pretty narrow. And here maybe I can just point out that, and here we're going back to 1981, so the beginning of the Troubles, and you can see the falling share of expenditure on education and health and agriculture. I mean, you can see this is a recipe for long-run decline. So all this other stuff of growing wheat and rice and being the richest state in India was basically coming at the expense of other kinds of investments. So it's hard to get really good data, and there is actually the Punjab State Finance Commission report is really good. We weren't able to extract too much from that for this paper, but it actually is very valuable. But basically, local government finances are a particular weakness in Punjab. Again, this is an India-wide problem. Local governments being underfunded, but it's particularly bad in Punjab, it seems. And again, if you think about urbanization for industrial development, if the cities don't have money to invest in, where are you going to get those industrial clusters? They could come from the state government, but you just saw the state government has no money either. So there's also these surveys of different dimensions of governance, and Punjab actually looks pretty good on most of them, but interestingly, the one where it actually does really badly is effectiveness and efficiency of governance. So that's here's the details, and here's the measures 2002 2016. So you can see this is well, actually maybe I've got that wrong. Anyway, I'll have to check that one. Anyway, okay, so I'm now kind of giving you a summary. I have to say that with all this kind of doom and gloom, the Punjab government has been trying to tackle the state's obstacles to economic development. I met Vinnie Mahajan more than 2 decades ago, and I'm familiar with her work, and she was I think very important in helping to create these expert groups, the expert group to try to address these issues. So there are aspects of the government institutions which are very serious about trying to deal with these things, and there is progress in areas where the administration can make incremental improvements, right? There's always some of these things that you can do, but as we noted at the beginning, there are some binding constraints which require larger efforts to tackle, and they can't be done just by a few bureaucrats working individually or heroically. And I think, given the dire fiscal situation, I think there has to be some central help to make any progress. Otherwise, it will just get worse. I think changing the national food procurement policy can help, and has already begun. In March or April, the center announced it would incentivize farmers to switch from wheat and rice to maize and pulses. It's not a magic bullet, but it's a start, in terms of changing the current lock-in. And so I think that's a hopeful sign, but I think a lot more will need to be done. And I think the relative deficits in the types of human capital and infrastructure that are needed for a knowledge economy may deserve greater attention, because Punjab is never going to be a manufacturing hub for any part of the world. It's just not well situated geographically, and I think its history, it's not suited for building huge factories assembling iPhones. But there's plenty of scope for higher productivity, higher value added, custom type products. And I don't know exactly what those would be. I think the Punjab Vision document had a long list of 35 different areas, very heterogeneous. But again, it wasn't clear how you're going to get from here to there, except it's clear that you have to do something about higher education. Some kinds of skilling in particular are going to be valuable whatever happens, right? So the Indian government produced engineers, and they thought those engineers were going to, and they did build dams and hardware and stuff like that. But then ultimately they retrained as software engineers, and they were able to adapt. So sometimes skills can be adaptable. So, okay, so here's the figure, and we added this because Montek asked Lakhwinder a question yesterday, and here you can actually see, in some sense, in one dimension, what the problem is for Punjab, or one of the dimensions. You can see that the blue line is India's rate of gross fixed capital formation, ratio to product, and the red line is Punjab, and you can see that they're pretty much in line all the way up to 97, 98, and then they diverge, and the divergence grows slightly in the 2000s. Okay, so let me conclude. I have 10 seconds. Punjab has benefited from a political bargain with the center and the rest of the nation in the 1960s, right? So in some sense, this was a political bargain, right? The economic structures that resulted were already coming under strain in the 1970s and 1980s. And it was part of the reason for the conflict. I mean, there were other, cultural, religious reasons, but the resource constraints of the Green Revolution were already being manifested in the 70s. And instead of dealing with it then, I think the national government ignored the problem and it got worse. And then in 1991, economic liberalization exacerbated the constraints and highlighted the limits of the Green Revolution food procurement economy. So basically, to conclude, Punjab is under enormous social and environmental stress, and this is effectively a national problem. It's 2% of the population, but you're getting 30-40% of the wheat and rice, and you're also getting a lot of negative externalities from the state of what's happening in Punjab. If Punjab becomes a desert, those externalities are going to be multiplied 100-fold. So that's my plea for urgency in terms of addressing the economy of Punjab. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Nirvikar Singh ji. Okay, ma'am, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. No. It's hard to go after that, and I'll keep, and before Montek Ahluwalia, so I'll keep it short. I think a lot is talked about in terms of the decline of Punjab, and like Mr. Mahajan said, the decline of Punjab is honestly relative, right? I think as a state in the country, it still ranks amongst the top 12, 13 states in terms of GDP per capita. If you look at growth rates, they're not that much below national averages. But it is, when you compare it to what Punjab was and what Punjab is or what Punjab is becoming, I think that is where the challenge actually sits. A lot of people talk about the decline of Punjab from the 1980s, but there's also a story to be told in terms of the ascent of Punjab from the 1960s to the 1980s, right? In 1960, Punjab was like any other middling state in the country in terms of GDP per capita. But the growth that it saw over the next 15 years, I don't think any state has ever boasted of that kind of acceleration since then. And I think there's a story there. And that story is one of center-state partnership. And the reason why I mention this is because I think that is probably what is required in the addressing of Punjab's situation also going forward. So at that point of time in 1960s, it was the central government which funded a lot of infrastructure creation around dams, around canals. It was the state which actually, invested in building the procurement systems. It was PAU, Punjab Agriculture University, which did standout research, right, as compared to any other part of the country in saying how can rice, which was never grown in Punjab, which is never eaten in Punjab, be indigenized and actually be made to be, the accelerator of Punjab. And it was, at the end of the day, the farmer in Punjab who knew how to work hard. And that growth, the acceleration, took 10 years to show results, right? So there are also no silver bullets that we're actually going to find today to solve the Punjab problem, which does not require a 10 to 15-year effort. I think so that's the first thing to be said. The decline that Punjab is seeing, the relative decline that Punjab is seeing from being head and shoulders the number one state in the country in terms of GDP per capita to today being 12th, 13th, pick a number in that range, starts from agriculture. Agriculture is only growing at 1 or 2% in the country, and that's because we're growing the same set of crops. Yield and productivity has maxed out, and then prices grow at MSP. You have other states like MP, Maharashtra, where agriculture is growing at 6 to 8%. So that is not happening in Punjab. And then related to that is why our industry and why our services not growing. Many historic reasons for that, of course. We'll talk about the militancy in the 1980s, we'll talk about 1991 and Punjab not being ready for liberalization. But more recent, Punjab being a border state, but much more recently, and this is where, the fiscal health of the state comes in, one of the biggest challenges for growing industry and services in Punjab has been the availability of capital. There has been absolutely no capital available, and I think the paper actually showed that, right? If there has been no capital available to invest in infrastructure, to create shared infrastructure, to give incentives, again, in a state where, many of the challenges exist. For example, land in Punjab is the most expensive. Punjab has 75 to 80% of its land is arable. It doesn't have a lot of fallow land. It doesn't have a lot of wasteland, which can actually be given to industry. So if you compare Punjab land prices with any of the states around the country, and especially any of the neighboring states, land is more expensive. So how do you actually find the capital to actually invest in some of these things, which actually brings industry and services into place, right? So capital has been a biggest issue. I think Vinnie Mahajan ma'am did an excellent job in saying why are Punjab's finances so distressed and the number of reasons. I'd like to add just one or two more, right, to that, and then get to some of the solutions. I think one of the things is that Punjab historically has had a much larger public workforce in some of the sectors and spaces than any other state. So if you look at the police force in Punjab, it's on an average across India 2x more than any other part of the country, right? And there is a reason for that, the reason being an active border and a border in conflict. Punjab, because it invested in agriculture, has a much larger agri-extension workforce than any other state. That actually leads to cost. While wages were set to GOI rates in 2019, I think, as you said, there's a very large workforce which continues from before, which continues to get paid at much larger wages than the rest of the country. And these are some of the things which are leading to the financial distress, of course, beyond some of the subsidies, etc. One more thing that I don't think gets talked about as much, at least our understanding is that GST has been actually, has been very hard for Punjab in terms of, Punjab's financial situation. So one is that Punjab actually had a number of taxes which got subsumed under GST but do not get compensated for. Right or wrong, but there was an agriculture purchase tax in Punjab, right, which actually doesn't come through in GST. Second is that Punjab historically was a production state and not a consumption state, right? And all states which are consumption states have been struggling to come up to the same level of, tax value as compared to, what they were before. So I think that also potentially has to be accounted for when we look at Punjab's fiscal health. I guess, the policy paper is about policies and prospects. So I guess the question is always about, where do we go from here? And perhaps to, talk a little bit about what is the future. I think every research, the first growth of Punjab started from agriculture. This one probably will also have to start from agriculture, right? And when we talk about what needs to happen in agriculture, the answer is a no-brainer. Everyone has talked about it for the last 30 years. It's diversification, right? There's enough and more reports which have been written on diversification. So the question is, why does diversification not happen? And there, I'd like to go back to my initial point that diversification will actually have to be funded and supported by the center and state coming together. The state itself cannot do diversification. There is no crop in today, we've looked at every possible crop, which comes even close to the profitability of rice. There is just none. But that doesn't mean that cannot happen. It will take the same number of years that Punjab agriculture took to perfect rice growing and its yield and its profitability as, for any other crop today, as happened for rice. And in that time, there are investments which are needed. In that time, there is money which is needed. Money is needed to actually compensate the Punjabi farmer for diversifying into something else until the profitability of rice and that crop actually matches, right? Money is needed for research, that PAVU will need to do. Money is needed for setting up supply chains and setting up infrastructure that is needed. The state actually doesn't have that money. At the same time, if one thinks about the money that the central government might save if they were to procure less rice from Punjab, there is fertilizer subsidy, there is the cost of procurement. And we are obviously talking about a place where we don't need as much rice anymore. This is not about questioning the food security of the country. This is about reducing rice in Punjab to a level where some amount of money, some amount of power, some amount of water starts getting freed up, right? So I think there is a responsibility that the center needs to also take as it talks about Punjab diversifying away from rice, and that money is on the table. And of course, the state needs to put in the money that it will save from power. There are certain parts of Punjab where our analysis indicates that the cost of power per acre is as high as 20,000 rupees to actually grow rice. The value that the farmer gets out of rice is 32,000 rupees, right? And the cost of power is already reaching that level. So when the state starts saving that money, how much of that does it actually start putting in? I think there are some no-brainers. Maize, which is now a very big GOI priority, maize as a source for ethanol and not rice is something, it's historically something that Punjab has grown. Today, productivity, yield, etc. do not come up to rice, but I think we can get there in 5 years if we invest behind maize. That can easily probably take care of 15 to 20% of rice growing area. And then one starts looking at fruits and vegetables and the related supply chains. What happens, no-brainer, what happens when we start focusing on agriculture? Jobs start getting created in supply chains. Farmer unrest, the farmer dissatisfaction, which often becomes an hindrance to any big change, starts getting addressed in Punjab. And that is, money starts getting freed up, power starts getting freed up for industry, water starts getting freed up for industry. And that is when one starts thinking simultaneously about industry and services. It is a border state, it is a small state, the land is very expensive, there is no ports nearby, it's landlocked. So I don't think, as you all said, there is any industry that one can say Punjab is truly competitive in and will, attract a large set of investments. But I think there are industries, our analysis says, like textiles, like sporting goods, like farm equipment, where historically supply chains exist, historically skill sets exist, historically ecosystems exist. And how can we actually continue to support those and help those SMEs actually get a little bit bigger and bring in more investments there? Food processing linked to agriculture diversification could be another one. I think there's some other very interesting possibilities here. I don't know how many of you have ever landed at the Mohali airport more recently, but when you land in Mohali, there is 1,000 acres of land, 1,500 acres of land, largely owned by the government, which is available today, right? When I fly to Pune, I fail to understand why Pune should continue to be an ITS, GCC center for the country. The airport is poor, Hinjewadi is 45 minutes away, and Punjab has an amazing technical education ecosystem at this point of time. We have IIT Ropar, we have Thapar, we have Punjab Engineering College, universities like Plaksha are getting set up. I think that place is ripe for a 10-year evolution into IT, ITS, and GCC if we were to think about it from that perspective. And the final industry I think I want to talk about is tourism. Again, I feel there is no reason for why Punjab cannot be the next Rajasthan. There is border tourism, there is Sikh history. The Maharajas of Punjab were potentially as rich and as large visioned in their architecture. When you think about Patiala, Kapurthala, there is Anglo-Sikh history, farm tourism. And I think, again, it's one of those sectors where if one invests, you can create a lot of disaggregated jobs around the state, addressing potentially so these are some of the ideas I think that exist. A lot needs to be done behind that. I think, again, going back to some of the issues, land is a very big issue. Land cost is a very big issue. One needs to think about that. Analysis indicates that land-related building laws, FARs, etc., a very big issue. Ease of doing business, I think, as has been discussed about in the state, is a very big challenge. Some of the labor laws, that is what the state needs to look at, right? But I think summarizing, I do want to say there is no silver bullet, but I do think there are bankable and I would say aspirational solutions for Punjab. I don't think this problem can be solved by Punjab alone anymore. I think Punjab has always served the country in terms of protecting the border, in terms of providing rice, water. I think some amount of center-state partnership has to happen for Punjab to come through this. And I do think that the people of Punjab, are up for that second resurgence. And let's see where this goes. Thank you.
You will speak? No, Ahluwalia sir will speak last.
He's the last because of this question also.
Okay. So yours last.
It's over.
Yeah.
Can I speak from here?
Yeah, please, sir.
Actually, can you put that slide on which had the
Gross capital formation.
Well, while you do that, let me just, Poonam, thank you very much for inviting me. I did have reservations because, I don't really have very much to add. But what I thought I would do is use this opportunity to just highlight one or two things. Now, it's quite clear from the paper that the big distortions that people talk about when it comes to Punjab is simply the complete failure to switch the agricultural system from wheat rice to something more diversified. The first question is that, everybody I think is agreed that this should happen. But I'm not sure whether in the government they're as clear about how it's to happen. What I guess is that there is no desire whatsoever to change any of the price distortions that are causing the present distortion to persist. And so therefore the idea is that we should offset these price distortions by some subsidies or grants. And since the fiscal situation is pretty difficult, that is the responsibility of the center. And it owes it to Punjab because of all the wonderful things that we did, defending the country, etc., etc., etc. Now, I think if you're taking a cold-blooded look at what's going to change, if the government can get away with getting a huge amount of assistance from the center, I'm in favor. Anybody would be in favor of getting more money. It makes sense. We don't have the chairman of the Finance Commission is very shrewdly, in spite of Chatham House rules, managed to exempt himself from this meeting. Now, what would the poor guy say to the business that, look, we are completely mucked up because of your, meaning the national, food procurement policy. Highly distortionary, it's ruining the state, it's going to desertify Punjab, etc., etc., etc. And we're not going to put any pressure on you to change those policies. On the contrary, we're going to say you should continue those policies because otherwise our farmers are going to be very unhappy. So therefore, how do we get out of this mess? Oh, it's very simple. You should just subsidize us so that we don't respond to the wrong pricing policies that you've imposed upon us. I just want to know whether in Plaksha University or in wherever else, if you put it that brutally, does everyone say, oh, this is a typical New Delhi academic kind of view, doesn't understand the situation? Or do they say, there's a point there? And I'm just not sure. I mean, I haven't lectured on this anyway. Don't dare lecture on this in Punjab, because when I was, there have been odd references to this so-called group of experts. All of them were experts. I was the non-expert. Amrinder Singh said to me that, look, I'm really upset that Punjab was at the top of the per capita income league, and we are now slipped to 10. We are probably now 12th or 13th or whatever, 16th. And we want to get back to where we were. So I said, that's great. Because what you're really saying is that we have been growing at less than the national average. The paper, by the way, doesn't have any growth rate figures, so I really urge you to stick in something like that on the growth rate. I mean, roughly Punjab's been doing 5%, country sort of doing 6.5%, 7%. And there was a time when Punjab was growing faster. So what I said to him was, Mr. Chief Minister, sir, what you're asking is that we should transform Punjab from a kind of 5% growth state to a 9% growth state. And are you willing to do all that? He said, absolutely, we're willing to do all of that. Well, I knew that on agriculture, it wouldn't work. So I said to myself, maybe on agriculture, we'll have to live with the distortion a little bit more. And I mean, a correction will come. I mean, simply because if you're not in need of this much rice, because, other states are now producing quite well. I mean, Madhya Pradesh did a wonderful job on wheat, and hopefully all the UP, Bihar, etc. will do it on rice. In fact, what will happen is the minimum support price, cannot be pitched at the cost of production plus 50% of Punjab. It's going to be at the cost of production for the country to produce the amount of rice the country needs. And that is going to keep going down, and Punjab agriculture will keep getting less and less profitable. But, that's like it might take 10 more years before any change occurs. Unless you believe that the government of India will keep procuring more and more wheat and rice than it actually thinks it needs, which it can only sort of absorb by giving more and more of it away free. And that's, I suppose, if you are having a discussion on the national fiscal situation, that's a relevant thing to look at. But, it seems to me that the approach that we must do subsidies to offset price distortions is not really going to work. So this is the first question, that whoever's doing some work on Punjab, they really need to address this question. I mean, am I satirizing by exaggerating the nature of the problem? Now, just look at this chart. What this thing says is that Punjab's, gross capital formation is somewhere between 15 and 20%, which actually for a 5%, we should be, if you look at what's going on in the world, countries that have 15% gross capital formation are growing a little bit faster than 5%. So there's an issue there. I think you said that there's no money. There's a lot of money. I mean, if there's 15% gross capital formation, where's the lack of money? So there's an issue. Where's it going? Is it being effectively used? And so on. That's one point. Second point is, when you look at industry, there's been lots of references to the fact that, Punjab industry suffered because of liberalization, import. All the states say the same thing about their industry. But as a country, I think industry didn't do as badly as people thought. So what is it that caused a problem in Punjab? The notion that Punjab is landlocked. Landlocked makes a lot of sense if there are customs borders. But, frankly, Punjab is what? It's 4 hours away from Indira Gandhi Airport. And, that's not being landlocked. There's far too much focus that we don't have an international airport in Punjab. Quite honestly, if you have an international airport with one plane flying in every week, or every day even, as opposed to being 4 hours away from an airport that has 30 planes every day, you would most likely use the latter and not the former. So this argument that Punjab has insuperable problems just doesn't hold water in my view. On the education stuff, it's good. If the results are nice, that's wonderful. And, I don't know about higher education and so on, but one of the things that we did during this expert group report, he said, what about digitalization? And could you do a little bit of jumping ahead? Now, I see that this report, this paper, makes a somewhat disparaging remark about the Punjab vision for development on the grounds that it's talking about AI and this, that, and yeah, maybe that's a bit exaggerated. But, I thought that the whole issue of getting startups a big push forward, particularly in a place like Punjab where quite a lot of people are educated. Many of them want to run away to Canada and Australia, but I don't think they'll be allowed to. So these are all educated guys who can start doing something in the world of digital economy, getting information to farmers that would be relevant. So the whole issue of getting startups going, I thought was a big thing. And actually, Ajay Banga, who was a member of the group, very distinguished group, you've got to admit. I mean, one of them became president of the World Bank. He was really convinced that that's something we could do something about. So I don't know if there's anyone here from the World Bank. They were there earlier. But I'd really like to ask them, okay, I'd really like to ask what has happened to those ideas. My last point really is a very common one, and that is that when you talk to businessmen, they say that, look, India doesn't perform well on the ease of doing business if you ask businessmen what ease of doing business is. Now, the trouble is the World Bank has popularized the ease of doing business as a tick mark. So every civil servant prepares reports on the ease of doing business. They tick mark everything. And then when you ask a businessman, they say, well, this is not getting us anywhere. We had someone who was from the industry, and I suggested to him that, look, why don't you get your guys together and come up with about 100 things that you think need to be changed. I think this was Gilotra who was running the show. I must ask him, maybe I can ask you, how many of those things got changed? Because, when I met Amrinder, I said to him, look, I realize that on this free power and all this, it's asking too much. But will you promise to get 75% of these things done? Because quite honestly, I mean, if he had called in his top 10 civil servants and said, get 75% of this done, I don't care which 75%, but if you don't get it done, I'm firing you. It would have been done in 48 hours. Now, why wasn't it done? And this is not just Punjab. This is every state government has this opportunity. Because I think Manish is there. He's the godfather of all this ease of doing business, and he's done lots of work. The number of offensive provisions is in the several thousands. So I would just say that, if you want to kind of get going, just do this. Pull out that list of Karan Gilotra and tell your guys that, listen, there's no reason why 80% of this, I said 75, but let's raise the thing, can't be done within a week. Because these are utterly mindless restrictions that somebody 50 years ago thought of. They have little relevance today. But, it's the nature of a bureaucracy that if they're running the system and they haven't thought about changing it themselves, they are not going to say, yes, this is completely useless, and I've been spending a lot of time on it, but now I don't think we should. This has to be done from the top. So frankly, I think, but I do feel that on the agriculture front, Punjab could actually have been a leader in agriculture. In the agricultural transformation of the country, other states have done a terrific job of diversifying. You're getting strawberries grown in Maharashtra and all kinds of things. And I think this has been a big failing. Given that the interest of the public in in agriculture and familiarity with it, I think that's something that we should take another look at that. Finally, one little quarrel that I have, I think you said that Punjab is not a consumption state.
It's more of a production state than consumption.
Well, I'm not sure about that because Punjabi. If you identify a whole bunch of Indians, who are the guys who visibly like to consume? It is the Punjabis. I mean, there's this I don't know how many people here understand Punjabi, but even the ones who understand Hindi will work this one out. Because there's a long saying in the Punjab which says something like this. I may have got it wrong. It goes, Khada pita laheda, baki ahmad shaheda. Now, what that means is, whatever you've eaten or drunk, that is of benefit to you. Khada pita lahe. Lahe means lab. Baki ahmad shaheda, he'll come every 2 years, loot the place and go back. This is harking back 200 years. So this is a part of the country that's been used to people invading it, every now and then taking away whatever you save, whatever gold ornaments you have. So the basic belief was, if you've got some money, good food, that's consumption. So I don't buy this idea that I think at the back of it is some notion that if you're a production state, you gain tax revenues. I mean, the whole point of the GST was that if you're a consumption state, you'll gain the tax revenues. So this is, I think, not really correct. Anyway, these are disconnected remarks. Let me say that I really enjoyed reading the paper. So when I'm suggesting make a few changes, it's in a very positive sense. I should tell you that I've even mentioned this somewhere in my memoirs, that I was very conscious of the fact when, in the brief period, not so brief, 10 years that I was Deputy Chairman of the Planning Commission, we had no state-specific analysis of what would be the relevant drivers of growth in State A or State B or State C. Logically, we should have been calling, when we met with chief ministers, we should have been saying, look, we have 50 schemes in every sector. And frankly, 10 of these are not very relevant for you. The things that matter are these, and tell us, what do you think about this area? That's not the way it was done. Because, every report has agriculture, services, industry, etc., etc. And therefore, I think I'm really glad that some work is being done on what are both the growth drivers and the growth prospects of each individual state. And in fact, it's another issue that I want to mention here. You refer to some series of indices that the Niti Aayog has prepared, different dimensions of governance and so on. And you say that Punjab does very well in all of them except effectiveness and results. I suppose that means GDP and that kind of stuff. Now the real question is, if you have this for every state, is there any evidence that these other indices, which we think of as leading to GDP, are correlated? Or is it that there's no correlation at all, in which case these indices perhaps are not really measuring what we ought to be measuring? But that would require doing it across states, not just in Punjab. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. So we are running short of time. So very few questions, 2-3 questions we will take, and the panelists will reply. Yeah.
So thank you. I think, this is wonderful, and hopefully the first in a long tradition of state-specific papers that, that we hope to commission in the IPF going forward. I think the one specific question I have is, the sense I get from everyone is, yes, there's historical reasons, things are difficult, we need central assistance, right? But I think what would be useful is to structure what a grand bargain might look like, right? That the state itself should be proactive in saying, here are the structural issues, here is so, you're at a local max, you need to there's a transition before you can get to the higher global max that we want to get to. And there is a certain transition glide path that you need the assistance with, right? So I think just looking at the intellectual horsepower amassed here, thinking about Punjab, you've got, everybody working hard. So instead of saying center should help, if you can come very concretely and saying, this is the commitment we're willing to make, right? I mean, so give us this support and this is going to be fiscally neutral. We will commit to doing this and just put that out there, right? I mean, and then, so I think the broader issue of agriculture subsidy reform, my own view now is it's so vexing, it's so important that the one place to get optimism from is how we did the GST, right? So we're probably going to need something like a GST council for agriculture factor market reforms, where you put center and state together and saying, this is going to be a glide path, center is going to compensate a certain amount subject to these conditions. So it's difficult, but I think you're going to need some structures like that. And maybe the states themselves can, going back to Montague's point, that the need of different states is different. If Punjab sets the agenda by saying, this is the reform pathway, please help us, I think that would be a proactive way, as opposed to saying, we're in trouble, we need help, because as Montague was saying, it's not incentive compatible, right? Because every current government wants that lump sum thing, and then the reforms don't happen. So anyway, so just a thought in terms of taking all of this work forward is to think through it's got to solve three problems, right? It's got to solve the economic problem, a political problem, and a trust problem, okay? So, and the economics is getting the incentives, aligning the prices and getting all of that, right? The politics is thinking through the distributional effects and making sure that the structure of the reform is win-win for most people. And then the trust is the hardest part, and the trust is what you're then going to need, like a GST type mechanism almost, where there's legislative guarantees or potential other amendments that says, here is the compensation over a period of time in return for making these reforms. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. So anybody else? Yeah, please, Martin.
I've been trying to think about the broader implications, and perhaps this question is for Montague. About 30 years ago, I won't tell you which economy I wrote this about, but maybe you can guess. I wrote a sentence which said, nothing fails like success. And my idea was, and it was a spectacular success that was failing, the story you're telling to me as a complete outsider is one I've seen in many cases, which is that economy and society gets trapped by the structural, political, economic, and social consequences of a colossal success. And is that what you're really trying to tell us? Isn't that part of the problem? That is to say, it is unbelievably difficult to change things which have been associated with extraordinary success.
You will respond, sir?
No, I always agree with Martin, but I don't know. This is a really tough question. I mean, what is the trigger that will make this change? I don't know. I mean, I need to think more about it. I mean, I haven't given enough thought. So I don't want to just give you a quick response. And we'll chat about it over dinner later on, if you like.
Yeah, Mr. Devesh Kapoor.
Actually, a state to compare Punjab is with West Bengal. These are two states.
Kindly get the mic close.
So a state to compare Punjab is West Bengal.
Even closer.
Even closer, okay. So these were two states that half a century ago were India's leading states. Both in the last 3-4 decades have seen a steep decline relative to the rest of India. In both states, you have seen very rapid capital flight, but I would say even more importantly, the flight of people. From Punjab, it is outside the country. From Bengal, it is inside the country, right? When a people lose confidence in the future of their country or their state, that to me is the most fundamental problem. The fastest growing sector in Punjab is immigration agents, right? If the people of a state think that the only future they have is to leave the place, that is showing such a strong sign of loss of confidence. To give you an example, the Indian Army, the Punjab regiment today, cannot get enough soldiers from Punjab to enlist, which is completely unprecedented for Punjab. It is called the Punjab regiment, It recruits in Punjab and it cannot recruit enough people, right? And so here I want to ask you all, the people writers, is the role of the Punjabi the diaspora, right? Is it an asset or a liability for the state? It has bid up the price of land because of remittances, a non-tradable good, which means that industry finds it much harder to set up because the price of a factor is bid up so much. The remittances drive a consumption economy, right? Almost no investment in anything that is productive. And of course, from outside, they support the farmers' agitations and so on and so forth. So how do you think that Punjab can leverage its diaspora from becoming an asset rather than being what I think right now as being a sort of liability?
Yeah. Will you like to respond or should I? Please.
Karthik, thank you very much for giving us an opportunity, and we are here. Punjab is being discussed. One of the very important misnomer in terms of land prices, especially being advocated, talked about Punjab, which I do not agree with anyone. The reason behind that is today the Union Government of India take a decision to open up 3 gates of the border to Pakistan for trade. You will find that all Indian investors will have a beeline to purchase the land at whatever the cost. So if you do not have an opportunity, you will not take away land even it is available at throwaway prices. So I think that this is the opportunity which is not available. Therefore, we are making excuses that land is very costly. Because largely the industry has developed an idea that you are going to get land without any cost. Why? Because you are going to have long-term profits out of the business which you are going to have. The land cost, ultimately the lifetime of the business is a peanuts. But still you'll find that land is being talked about that it should be freely available. So I would like to say that free land pool has been developed by the state government of Punjab. The industrialists sometimes try to get it, but you'll find that they are not establishing industries. So I think that this is a kind of different set of problem which Punjab is facing because of the transportation cost to produce and sell goods and services elsewhere is relatively very costly compared to pre to 1991 when freight equalization policy was there. Punjab's industry was relatively throbbing and doing better because of this particular kind of policy. And after the dismantling of this particular kind of policy, you will find that Punjab industry has started moving out to the locations where the cost of transportation of goods and services are relatively low. So I think that this is a very important kind of issue which I have. Devesh, I think that diaspora is very heterogeneous, and large amount of diaspora do not have larger amount of funds to be invested in starting enterprises. Therefore, they pool together small savings earned from outside, sending remittances. Punjab is second highest next to Kerala in receiving remittances. Therefore, what they do is with little those kind of savings, they do promote kind of cultural kind of activities, and then they're building their own capital, whatever the capital they consider that in the future is going to be as one of the insurance for them. So that is the kind of thing. The third important thing which has not been talked about in the paper as well as by our discussants, that for a long period of time, the turmoil has changed the political leadership in a manner that political leadership has grown very rich. The bureaucracy has grown very rich in Punjab, but not the citizens. I think that is an important question to be tackled. I think, Aluwale Saab, you have been in the planning commission, you might have been faced these kind of issues when you have been interacting with the bureaucracy as well as the political leadership. I think that in a particular point of time, you will find that if the 2022 mandate which has been given by the Punjabis to replace the older political parties, taking terms, and you will find that every 5 years the government is changing, but no change in public policy as well as effectiveness in terms of delivering of goods and services to the people. So therefore, they have changed completely and the new government is in place. The problem is that bureaucracy is very risk averse. And teaching within a few hours and days to the political leadership that if you took some kind of decisions which are difficult ones, you are gone. So the political leadership also turn risk averse because time and again they have to face the electorate. And I think that they are very intelligent people, learned a lot that post-liberalization process, when the market has to develop, take over development, the political leadership has what to show to the voters. They are showing some kind of really required subsidies, which they consider that we are doing welfare, to exploit for a particular election, and next election you will find that the impact is over. So we have seen that if one election is fine, but in the next election that those subsidies are not working. So I think that there is an incentive that we have to step back. Now we have, Karthik, very larger question which you have talked about. We are intent to look into the nitty-gritties of the proposal, which is expected to be, win-win kind of situation, and we can suggest in a detailed manner in the paper. That is probably possible. We have been working on that, and that is available with us. The only issue which I would like to talk to you is that the most important point today in Punjab from the last 40 years period of time, no investment is taking place. The investment which is already there is searching for options outside Punjab. In the mid-80s, we have a larger proportion of investment moved out of Punjab to settle in either in Haryana or Himachal Pradesh. That was the turmoil period. But in the post-liberalization period, larger proportion of the industry like Hero cycles have diversified to motorcycle and scooters. They have invested in Faridabad. They have not expanded even, they have taken away rather the investment from Punjab to these kind of locations. So in a way you'll find that the liberalization processes when was taking place, Punjab was battling for a peaceful state. So that is the kind of investment which Punjab was doing for the country as a whole. So that has not allowed us to prepare to move towards getting benefits of the liberalization process. And therefore, the structure of the state and other states have changed. And you will find that our state is not able to generate itself the amount of investable resources which are required to break the win-win kind of situation. So I think that is where the paper has talked about a balance between the efforts done by the state government and the efforts combinedly done by the central government, because the larger proportion of the constraining factors that is holding back Punjab is one is international border, where all the decisions has to be taken by the union government even without consulting Punjab. So that is one-way traffic. So you have a tense relationship with Pakistan, and maybe whatever the reasons, people are very friendly, but governments are not, and therefore you will find that we are not able to leverage what is easily huge amount of investment which Punjab can attract, and that's the
Thank you,
private
Professor
investment.
Lakhwinder Singh ji.
Thank you very
We
much.
are running out of time. In fact, I will just like to reassure Mr. Kapoor that although no change has happened and we are doing the same thing again and again, but I think that we are very close to this 1991 moment, which was for the India, is now coming close to Punjab. And we will definitely, Punjab will not fall. They will definitely rise and do whatever is required to be done. But definitely in partnership with the Government of India, that is my thing. Regarding two things, that like you said, diaspora. Whether diaspora is an asset or liability, again, I think that's questionable. I totally agree with you. Sometimes they are asset, but at some other time their behavior, everything is like liability. Similarly, the Green Revolution, was it green? It was green in what sense? It has been red for the state, basically. If you go and see the environmental degradation and water pollution and things are happening, it's really, really very serious. So, but we all are conscious of that. The government is working on that, and we have some plans, some steps have already been taken, and some results are seen, and we are hopeful that the Finance Commission, which when they come, we will be able to give them some more ideas. But definitely the system which took 50 years, the national government and state government joined to make, cannot be transformed in 1 or 2 years. But we all are aware of our responsibilities, and we are hopeful things will get sorted out slowly. And Punjab, one thing is very clear, that once they decide to do it, they will do it very fast, better than anybody else, any state. So I have full confidence coming from the east of India. I belong to Bihar. I have worked for 35 years in Punjab, in the farming sector, mostly in farming sector and food grain sector and industry. So I know only these two sectors of Punjab, and they have a lot of energy. If once the policy gets settled better, because this, the Professor Lakhwinder Singh said that this new government with the new people with new thought process, there is a lot of hope. So let's hopeful we will do something better. Thank you.